Apostle Bishop, standing to the right of the Chief Apostle Niehaus. We were unable to identify all the apostles pictured here. However, they included the apostles Borman, Brickner, and Ruff. This photo relates directly to the early pioneers of the work in North America and was taken in 1912. I feel certain many will be able to identify some of the faces on this picture. From left to right, seated, is the district elder at that time, John Erb. Apostle Miral, the first district apostle in North America, District Elder Furdenberg. Standing left to right, Priest Ehrenberg, Priest Father Fendt, Priest Schreiner, Priest Naum, Priest Steinway, Elder Reinecke, and District Elder Runge. Apostle Miral was ordained an apostle in April of 1901 and died in office in July 26, 1925. This photo was taken in 1917. We will give you a few moments to see if you can recognize some familiar faces. Seated from left to right, Priest Otto, Priest Armbrust, District Elder Runge, Priest Father Fendt, and Deacon Miller. Standing left to right, Deacon George Koehner, Deacon Schlesinger, Deacon Koehner, Bishop William Fendt, Apostle John Fendt, and Deacon Heckel, and District Elder Redberg. These brothers worked primarily on the east coast of the United States and later in the District of Canada. The Chief Apostle Bishop, third Chief Apostle of the Second Sending, ordained as an apostle in August of 1906, served as a Chief Apostle from September 1930 until July 6, 1960. This photo was taken June 26, 1932 in Chicago by Priest Emil Weibrecht. Time does not permit us that we identify all the brothers in this picture. I am certain you will recognize some of them. Left to right, District Evangelist Flappin, Apostle John Fendt, District Apostle Erb, Elder Forstner, Elder Millenschern, Elder Bussy, Elder Runge. Other brothers included the Apostle Hebe, the District Evangelist Bing, the District Elder Redberg, Elder Naum, District Elder Steer, District Evangelist Wolf. District Apostle John Fendt, who succeeded the Apostle Erb, and due to the World War II, when contact was cut off from the Chief Apostle Bishop, he served as a leader in North America for 2 years as a bishop. He was ordained as a district apostle by the Assistant Chief Apostle Schlafhoff in 1944. Apostle Hebe served as an assistant apostle under the Apostle Fendt. He was ordained an apostle in July of 47 and died in Chicago. Father and Sister Fendt, pictured here, was taken just prior to their 50th wedding anniversary under the Rose Arbor in the Astoria Church in Queens. Sister Anna Fendt, mother of the district apostle and Bishop Fendt. This picture was taken on the celebration of her 100th birthday. Pictured here is the Chief Apostle Bishop and the then District Apostle Walter Schmidt. Chief Apostle Walter Schmidt, successor to the Chief Apostle Bishop, ordained as a Chief Apostle in 1960, retired in office February 15, 1975, and died in February of 81. Chief Apostle Streckeisen, ordained as an apostle in August of 1952, served as the Chief Apostle from February 1975 to November 1978. He died in office while visiting the South African district.
After the death of the Chief Apostle Streckeisen, the Apostle Conference selected the Apostle Urwiller to succeed him, and he was ordained on November 18, 1978, as the Chief Apostle. He served as Chief Apostle for almost 10 years, and after suffering a severe illness, was replaced by the Assistant Chief Apostle Fair, who was ordained Chief Apostle on Pentecost of 1988. Our present Chief Apostle has been the most traveled Chief Apostle in the history of God's faith. His visits to many countries and continents has served to build the work across the face of this earth and provide a foundation upon which the work shall grow to the completion and the coming of the Lord Jesus. camera on me. Good morning, dear brothers and sisters. We'd just like to introduce a tape which we will show you in a few moments. As you may know or may not know, the Bishop Fendt passed into eternity on November 22nd last year. He is my father, and we had a tape that we produced in 1985, which some of you may have seen. But in honor of his passing, we'd like to show you some of the excerpts of that tape. The brother who was with us on that occasion reached the age of 98 and is still with us. The Bishop Fendt reached the age of 94, as I have said, served as an administration brother for almost 50 years, and was sealed in 1899 in the beginning of this work in America. We would like to introduce that tape now to you, and we thank you for your attention. We will speak to you in a few moments. This morning, we have a little different program that we would like to introduce to you, which we feel most appropriate concerning the service that is to follow. We would like to review a little bit of the history of our New Apostolic work in North America. And for that occasion, or for this occasion, we have with us two brothers, one of which was in the first sealing in North America and the other in the following sealing service. First, we have Brother Arthur Koehner, who is 92 years of age, who was sealed in 1899 by the Apostolic in New York City. Secondly, we have my father, the retired Bishop Fendt, who was in the second sealing in America, also by the Apostolic in 1899 as well. We would like this morning to ask him a few questions concerning the early history of our work here in North America. This morning, Arthur, we'd like to introduce you to the New Apostolic world here of North America. This morning we are telecasting to 72 locations in the United States and Mexico and some of the islands. And many of our people are not aware of the early history of the New Apostolic Church. And considering you were in the first sealing in the United States in New York and are the oldest living New Apostolic who was sealed in America, we'd like to learn a little bit about how it was in the beginning. Do you remember the day you were sealed in 1899?
I do.
How many were sealed with you on that occasion?
My mother, father, and two sisters, Sister Elsie and Sister Helen. And I don't think Brother George, I don't think he was of age that time.
Was your grandmother also sealed at the same time?
Mother Wolf.
Mother Wolf. And how was it in the beginning of the work here in New York? You were born in Yorkville, I understand.
That's right.
Where did we hold our services in those days?
Well, in our home.
In your home?
Right.
And that was a regular service that you used to conduct in the service. Did you have confirmation in those days?
Yes, we did. I think Sister Elsie was confirmed at 13 by Apostle Ruff.
That was the first confirmation then in the United States.
Right.
Were you also sealed, confirmed apostolic?
I sure was, by Apostle Miro.
I heard some stories about how your grandmother attracted some of the children to Sunday school in those days. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, she used to buy penny candy bags, and what a class she had. Wow.
I understand there wasn't enough room to take care of all the children.
Right. And sometimes there wasn't enough prize bags to go around. We had to go out and buy more.
So it was a kind of a little stimulant to get our youngsters into Sunday school.
That's correct.
And who was the early apostle in this country? Do you remember?
Well, Apostle Miro.
Oh, after the Apostle Ruff came to seal you, then Apostle Miro came
Miro took over
as a kind of a permanent apostle here.
Right. Yeah, he used to come to our house. We lived in the basement at that time. And he'd come over at dinner time and have lunch and lay on the floor and take a little snooze.
Doing a little snoozing in between the job, huh?
Right, before he went back to work.
So I guess you got to know him pretty well.
Oh, yes. He knew me pretty well, too.
I understand he was quite an interesting person.
He sure was.
And
very.
Certainly was instrumental in the foundation of the New Apostolic work here in New York. Now we'd like to spend a little time with the bishop to ask him a little concerning about how it was in the beginning of the work here in America, because his experience was a little different maybe than on Brother Arthur's. He was sealed in 1899 with his family. Tell us, Bishop, how it was in the early days of the New Apostolic work here in New York.
Well, any pioneer work is difficult work. And we had several attempts made, or the church had several attempts made, by sending people over from Europe to establish the church on a firm basis. They weren't too effectual until 1904, when the Apostle Miller was sent over to conduct the affairs of the church. The Apostle Miller was a very dedicated man, very courageous man full of faith and fire. And we, as my brother and I, who later became the apostle, my brother and I followed him around wherever he went while he was in the area, because we liked him so much. In fact, we loved him, and he loved us. At any rate, he brought together the portions of the church membership, which was scattered now in Buffalo, Chicago, New York, and he gathered those into one unified church. Before that, we were kind of separated from one another. Each individual group carrying the work of teaching, preaching, and so forth. The Apostle Miller brought that group together, and as Arthur said before, he finally ended up in Detroit, over here in the United States, in the New York area, for about 10, 12 years. Then he moved to Detroit. Now he made that the central headquarters. My mother told me that my father, on the journey coming over as an immigrant to the United States, met a man who was German, traveling to Australia from Germany on whatever personal business they had. But at any rate, this man was New Apostolic. And he gave my father a card and said, if ever you want somebody who will listen to you in the church matters of faith, go to this man in New York. And that man happened to be Priest Koehner, who was referred to by Arthur a few minutes ago. My father went to Philadelphia in the meantime, never got back to New York again for a couple of years. In Philadelphia, he found this woman who was married, the girl he married, who was my mother. Then he came to New York. And he thought of this card he had. We'll have to try that. So he went to visit this man, Koehner, and he said, I have a boy not baptized yet. Would you baptize him? Which Koehner proceeded to do. Then he put him in contact with the Apostle Roof in 1899, as referred to by Arthur, and there he was sealed. We were all sealed.
Who was in that first sealing, Bishop?
Family of 5, 3 boys, father and mother.
And anybody else that you can recall?
Yes, there was a man by the name of Herb.
Oh, the Apostle Herb.
He later became the Apostle Herb. It's a peculiar thing and outstanding, I think, unique. And out of that group that was sealed in both Arthur's group and ours, which were 2 families actually. Out of that group there came 2 district apostles. And
yourself as the bishop, yeah?
And the priest, my father.
Mm-hmm.
That was rather unique in itself.
I would think so.
So at any rate, my father was much taken in and up with this new faith, the apostolic faith, and me being a resident. And it was like the same characteristics that the Apostle Miller had, he had as well. He would travel from place to place, serving in some cases New Jersey, which was being established now as a church in the apostolic faith, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and New York. My father would travel back and forth. Often he would take one of the boys with us, among us. And my father was outspoken in this respect, that if he saw a man reading the Staatszeitung, which was a German publication, he was like the bull and red flag in the bull. He would get out, talk to this fellow, open this conversation, saying this is the good weather, fine weather, whatever the conversation might be. He would start, just open up things. And he never let that fellow go until he had talked him into something or other.
The Scott side was kind of a tip-off that he was of German extraction, I assume.
That's right. So, at any rate, we, of course, were rather embarrassed by that when we were kids. We would dig a hole and crawl into it.
You didn't want to be associated with it.
Because we were embarrassed.
I understand when your brother, the district apostle, the later district apostle Fendt, when he was asked to serve in the work here in America, that he had one request from his God, that he would be assured that his mother would be cared for. Is that correct?
Yes, he mentioned it in his later services. That's true.
That it was his wish that if he would serve the Lord, that God would take care of his mother.
It was kind of your trade-off. If you take care of my mother, I'll take care of your work.
That was a little bit like the Apostle John when the Lord Jesus was told him to take care of your mother. How old was your mother when she died?
My mother's 104 years of age.
So God really kept his promise, huh?
That's right, he did.
I understand you were born in Hell's Kitchen, not far from 42nd Street.
Yes, when my folks moved here from Philadelphia, they moved into Hell's Kitchen. They didn't know Hell's Kitchen from any other place in the world, but
that was near Times Square, as I recall.
That's right. That's the old. It still is an area of crime. It was in those days too. In fact, later on, we moved into Harlem. My folks moved about 4 times in 3 years, following either the church or else the apostle where I lived.
During the time when you lived in Hell's Kitchen, I understand your mother got visited on occasions by the police commissioner.
Yes, she had coffee and cake with the police commissioner.
Who was the police commissioner in those days?
Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt, that was one of the later presidents of the United States?
That's right.
Isn't that interesting?
It was.
I guess he came to break bread with us, so we'll remember him today.
He was concentrating on this crime situation. He was trying to clean up Times Square. He didn't succeed, neither did everybody else since. Everybody tried, but
even Teddy couldn't do that, huh?
Yeah.
Your father was also instrumental in bringing many of the early ministers, administration brothers into the church. Do you recall some of the names of those?
Well, I recall a man by the name of Retberg, which later became district elder in Detroit. Herb, who became district elder in Buffalo, an apostle later on in Chicago. A man by the name of Nam, who was sent to Philadelphia. These are people that my father brought testimony to or worked with. He went to Philadelphia, and various places in New Jersey visited, that he made friends, associations, founded, ground, developed the church.
Didn't he also bring in the then Brother Runge, who became district elder?
Yes, he was instrumental in doing that. With the help, my father wasn't alone in this, but he was a prime factor in this work. He did bring in the Runge family, which was a large family, about 15 people at the time.
I understand there was an interesting experience with the district elder Redberg, then Ludwig Redberg, as he met your grandfather. Do you recall that story?
Yes, that was the case of my father on a journey to Germany, a visit to Germany. On the way back again, he gave testimony to the crew of the ship, and the crew of the ship was so tired that they were listening to him and said, give us any more of this stuff, we're going to throw you overboard.
They were going to throw your father overboard?
That's right. Of course, that was only a threat.
He was a pretty big man, as I remember, so it would be a little difficult.
That's true. But that was the thought.
And I understand that then Sailor Redberg tipped him off what was going to happen.
At that time, yes, he became a friend. I mean, my father gave him his address in New York. He said, whenever you get to New York, why, come to my house, we'll take care of you. When he came over, Redberg came over within the year, and stayed with us for a little while. Finally went to Jersey, and then finally to
Detroit. So that was the beginning of that relationship way back in the early time.
That's right.
Well, that's the foundation work of the church, which is very interesting. When you consider the humble beginning, Bishop, and where we are today with many churches and many buildings, I guess you kind of reflect back to the days when you didn't have any buildings that you could actually call your own. And maybe you and Arthur have experienced a little bit of that.
We didn't in our wildest dreams in those days think of the growth of future so far ahead that we're going to progress as far as we have progressed. It's really astonishing and unique in itself. But in those days, we met where we could meet. It was somebody's parlor, or front room, or back porch, or wherever it was, we could gather together. The storefronts, all that my father, as I said, 2 or 3 times moved to one place or another in order to be close to the church or close to the apostle.
Arthur, do you remember